So is Vladimir Putin about to make his mark on the main global criminal intelligence organization, Interpol? And if so, can Interpol survive? Tomorrow it's 194 members, one for every country on earth bar North Korea, will elect a new Interpol president in Dubai. The smart money says that this man, Russia's Alexander Prokopchuk, will be elected.
Our red notices alert police worldwide to wanted persons.
Critics say on his watch, Interpol issued red notice global arrest warrants, not for criminals, but for anyone opposing President Putin.
Different criminal activities and threats.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Browder.
Including this man, Bill Browder, recently detained in Spain for 2 hours under one such red notice. The one-time Moscow financier, now arch critic of Putin and Putinism.
To put his representative in charge of the most important international crime-fighting organization is like putting the mafia in charge, and that will only lead to bad things going forward. This is a perfect way for Putin to basically breathe the fear of God into all of his enemies, so that they know that they can't even escape Russia if one of his guys is at the head of Interpol.
And critics say Alexander Prokopchuk was the Russian Interpol official when it issued red notice arrest warrants for journalists, activists, anyone troublesome to the Kremlin. Like Mikhail Khodorkovsky, the leading Putin critic in exile at today's press conference. Like the late Boris Berezovsky, opposition campaigner and oligarch. Leonid Nevzlin, once an oil magnate. Vladimir Gruzinski, former media mogul. The list goes on and on.
It's well known, it's been known for years, that a slew of countries have permeated the red notice system and abused it. One's tempted to ask, why pick on Russia?
It's certainly true that there are other states that have abused the system. But the abuse from Russia is on a unique and industrial scale. It is purposive. It is a systemic problem in the relationship between the Russian criminal authorities and Interpol.
So calls here for Russian membership of Interpol to be suspended. Not far away in North London, at the Fair Trials human rights organisation, they say suspending Russia's pointless and damaging. But equally, this Russian appointment would be disastrous, not least because Interpol was, they say, showing signs of change and reform.
The first concern is that Interpol's at a really critical moment where it's meant to be implementing some really important safeguards against abuse, and a new president could derail that process. But the second point is purely a reputational one for Interpol. It's already been massively damaged by the disappearance of Meng Hongwei. So the idea of now putting...
That's the previous Chinese boss.
That's the previous Chinese boss. So the idea of putting in place a Russian president would really, threaten Interpol's reputation right now.
But in the UK, of course, all this comes in the wake of the Salisbury poisonings, according to British intelligence, the work of Russian spies. And that's why this row escalated today to Parliament.
If this Russian gentleman were to become head of Interpol, it would be an absolute insult to the victims of the Salisbury attempt.
We will have to look very, very seriously about our cooperation with an organisation so discredited and so corrupted.
On Capitol Hill, senators say they're letting the fox into the chicken coop. The Lithuanian parliament voted 88-0 to consider withdrawing from Interpol if the election goes ahead. Truth is, Interpol achieves much in areas like child abuse and organised crime, but on this issue, the future of the organisation itself may tonight be at stake.
Alex Thompson. Well, now, Interpol have not commented today, but from the House of Commons is MP Vince Cable, leader of the Liberal Democrats, and with me here is Benny Wenda, leader of the West Papuan Independence Movement, who was the subject of an Interpol red notice. We'll be talking to him in just a moment. But I wanted to start with you, Vince Cable. Do we need Interpol?
Well, yes. Crime is international. There are all kind of cross-border issues where a legitimate organisation with international arrest warrants would be essential, and that's why it's so utterly alarming that it's been corrupted by this politics. I mean, I don't know how many people appreciate that the Russian police general has been put forward was himself directly involved in misusing these red notices to pursue enemies of Putin. I mean, it makes a complete nonsense of the organization.
Well, didn't it make a complete nonsense of the organization that the Chinese were able to disappear the last man holding this post, who himself was Chinese?
Well, it did, and I think probably governments around the world should have been alerted to the way in which the presidents of this organization is being used by countries that do not respect the rule of law. But following it up in this way with a Russian crony of Putin, it's essentially putting the mafia in charge of a crime-fighting organization. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Vince Cable, stay with us for a moment, because we want to explore what happened to a man who was a victim of a red card. Now, you are leading the Papua New Guinea independence movement, and Indonesia, which is the colonial state, if you like, wanted your head. They wanted you locked up, and they issued a red card. What happened?
Yes, this is Indonesia put red notice because I'm a leader. This is the background of West Papua. Indonesia illegally occupied my country in nearly 50 years. And since then, Indonesia massacred my people. 500,000 men and women have been killed. Since then, I become a leader and peacefully demonstrations in West Papua, holding calling for international holding accountable for Indonesia what the Indonesia illegal occupation. Since the Indonesia put me, they arrest me and put me in prison, and they want to kill me. I managed to run away. I came to United Kingdom. And
what did the United Kingdom do about your red card? Did they hand you over to Interpol?
No, no. What happened? I tried to form the campaign, Free West Papua campaign. Since then, I travel around the world, so mostly in Africa and.
But did they get the red flag cancelled?
Yes, after they put the red notice, and then I find out, and then I couldn't traveling around the world last 2 years. And what happened? I have an international lawyer called Jennifer Robinson and a Fair Trial International based in UK. They helped me to working with the Interpol Secretariat to they find out that basically that's just political motivation. Indonesia misused the Interpol red notice.
Right. Well, I want to go back to Vince Cable then. We have there someone who feels that in fact the whole business of the issuing of the red notice was wrong and illegal. One begins to wonder whether this thing's been running haywire for some time.
Well, my understanding is that there are rules which prevent these arrest warrants, red notices, being used for political purposes. And in this particular case, there's been a good outcome. The British government didn't comply. But I think the problem now is that if the head of the organisation is not an executive head, but the president of the organisation is committed to undermining its objectives, then anything potentially bad can happen.
But do you think the British government have had their eye on the Interpol ball? I mean, it looks very much as if it was handed over to China, effectively, and now being handed over to Russia, what exactly is our interest in this thing?
No, they didn't have their eye on the ball. It was very clear from the minister's answers. They were rather taken aback by this whole issue. They are going to vote against the Russian. They're supporting the Korean, and that's the least they could do. But they should have been campaigning strenuously against the Russian general being adopted. And the other, of course, much bigger issue is that we can have inter-police cooperation in other areas. We're members of Europol in Europe, which is a perfectly clean organisation. The government are now undermining it through the Brexit negotiations. That's what we should be focusing on.
So, I mean, you would advocate now that we leave Interpol?
Not leave it immediately. We should be making preparations to leave it if it cannot be reformed properly. I think jumping out of it as a reflex action to this is probably not the right solution, but we certainly should be preparing ourselves to the fact that a parallel organisation might well have to be started. But in the meantime, let's concentrate on making Europol work.
Vince Cable, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and Benny, thank you very much indeed for coming.